This video is going to describe the changes in the FHWA NHTS over the years. Among the topics we'll touch on are differences in how the surveys were conducted, how trips and trip purposes were defined, what levels of geography each survey can provide statistically valid estimates for, the travel period file, and other minor notes of interest when comparing data across survey years. Before we begin, let's discuss the name change. The NHTS was originally the NPTS, which stood for the Nationwide Personal Transportation Survey. It began in 1969 and was conducted again in 1977, 1983, 1990, and 1995. In 2001, the name was changed to the National Household Travel Survey. It was most recently conducted in 2009. Naming aside, let's look at how the survey has changed over the years. First, let's look at who conducted each survey and how those organizations' approaches to data collection differed. The NPTS began as a survey conducted by the Census Bureau. It was based on in-home interviews with no proxies allowed for household members not interviewed. In 1990 and 1995, the survey was conducted by the Research Triangle Institute, better known as RTI. The NHTS in 2001 and 2009 was conducted by Westat. Both of these survey firms utilized telephone interviews and allowed for children to be interviewed by proxy, with a parent usually responding in their place. In addition, the data from Westat allows for standard errors to be computed using replicate weights. Next, let's see how the definition of a person trip and trip purpose has changed over the years. From 1969 to 1990, a person trip omitted any trip less than a block in length. From 1995 on, the standard was simply a change of address. In order to help respondents remember which trips they took, as well as details of those trips, a travel diary was added in 1995. In order to address the compatibility issues that these differences caused with prior surveys, the trip weights for 1990 were adjusted. Prior surveys, however, were left untouched, so differences between the 1983 or earlier surveys when compared to 1990 or later surveys may be in part due to differences in methodology. When it comes to trip purpose, definitions have been incredibly stable over the years. The coding in 1983 has been kept in place throughout, with the purpose variable containing 11 trip purposes and not allowing for home as a trip purpose. This means, for example, that a trip from work to home will be classified as a work trip. This variable is generally referred to as ytrip90. In 1995, a new trip purpose variable was created, allowing for home as one of 17 trip purposes. In 2001 and 2009, an even more detailed trip purpose breakdown was used, with home as one of 36 trip purposes. For a more detailed look at trip purposes over the years, please check out our trip purpose video, linked here. Over the lifespan of the survey, sample weighting was performed to allow for estimates to be computed at different levels of geography. National estimates are available for all years, as are estimates by MSA size. In the 1995 and prior surveys, only estimates at the census region level, or the national level, were statistically valid. In 2001, this was improved to the census division level. In 2009, estimates at the state level are statistically valid. The travel period, or long-distance file, catalogs long-distance trips taken in a specified time frame. For 1995 and earlier surveys, this time frame was 14 days, with trips of 75 miles or more from the respondent's household counting as a long-distance trip. In 2001, the period was extended to 28 days, and the definition of long-distance trip was expanded to include all trips with a one-way distance of 50 miles from home or more. In the 2009 survey, the travel period portion of the survey was not conducted. For all variables in all years, users should consult appropriate users' guides for respective values. But 2001 brought substantial changes of note. First, missing values were nearly universally coded to negative numbers, such as -1, -8, and -9. Users should remove all negative values when computing means and sums. Second, in surveys before and after 2001, many character variables such as driver and worker have 0, 1, and 0, 2 to indicate yes/no values. In 2001, values for these variables nearly universally omit the leading 0. Finally, the 2001 survey stands out in the more recent surveys as the only one that includes travel for 0 to 4-year-olds. Users should remove trips by these children when comparing trends across surveys by removing trips where our age is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. A common mistake is to remove trips where our age is less than 5. However, with the negative numbers issue just mentioned, doing so removes trips by users with unreported ages, which, for the purposes of control totals, are assumed to be 5 and over. We hope you've enjoyed our look at the FHWA NHTS over the years. Thanks for watching.